Well, I'm back. Oh yes, I am back from Throne of Skulls. Welcome to Damian's hobby vlog number 31. This is my event review of Throne of Skulls 2023. So yes, welcome back to Battle Streams in Middle-earth. This is my hobby vlogs. If you're new to the channel, the point of Battle Streams in Middle-earth is to help you clear your backlog. And we do that in a number of ways. The primary way we do that is through live streams. Myself and Steve Crow do a live stream every 2 or 3 weeks where we go through an issue of DX-Dean's Part Battle Games in Middle-earth, and we hang out together and we paint just for the fun of it. We paint the models that came with the magazine. We've been doing this for I think 4 years now, and we're on episode 91 at the time of recording, so it's really going really great guns. So if you haven't heard of that, come and jump on the next live stream with us and hang out and paint some stuff for the fun of it. It really is tons and tons of fun. The other thing I do on this journey is on this channel, sorry, is I chart my own hobby journey and my own attempts to kind of get things painted, ready for events, and try and reduce my hobby backlog every year. And I chart the kind of adventures I have when I go off to Middle-earth SBG events, and this is going to be the culmination of a part of that journey this year. If you've watched my hobby vlogs recently, you will have seen they've been building up. I've had the road to Throne of Skulls part 1, 2 and 3, and even a little teaser one before that about the 48-hour model. And I've been charting basically my progress to build this. So if this is all brand new to you, you might want to go and watch those vlogs first. But those vlogs charted my attempts over the past 6 weeks to paint up a Riders of Eomer force to take to Throne of Skulls 2023. And huge spoilers, it worked and I got everything done. But here is the army, it's sitting beside me, and then I took it to Throne of Skulls, and this hobby vlog is going to be my review of that event. It's really nice. Anyone who's followed my hobby vlogs for the last kind of year or so will know the way I've done this, that I was massively backed up with hobby reviews, and I've ended up having to do all my hobby reviews from all the events I went to in the last 2 months and kind of vaguely recall them. And as a result of that, in a desperate bid to catch up with the editing, they've been kind of cramped into the end of the hobby vlog to do with that thing. And it's really nice to be able to get back to doing this how I would like to do it, which is have the actual hobby vlogs to focus on the hobby stuff, and then have a specific vlog like this, which is just the event review. And also be able to do it while it's fresh in the mind. At the moment, Throne of Skulls was a week and a half ago, so I can actually remember what happened for the most part. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So there's not going to be too much to watch in this. I will be putting up pictures throughout of my games and those kind of things as they're appropriate, but this is very much a kind of sit and paint while listening type vlog. So get your paints out. Hopefully lots of you went to Throne of Skulls, and I saw lots of you there, so it'll be fun to kind of reflect on that. But if not, sit back and find out how Damian, the first light on the 5th day, got on with Riders of Eomer at Throne of Skulls. So first things first, I'm not going to talk too much about the hobby stuff because I've just covered that in previous vlogs, but this was my army. I was delighted to get it done. It was finished at 3:30 AM the night before the event, and I was taking it to a war. The idea came from the sun. The idea for this, I can't remember if I've mentioned this in vlogs before, so apologies, but I certainly haven't mentioned it in this one. I ran out of time to do my proposed Throne of Skulls project, which is the one I've been trying to do since 2019, and I needed something I could do in 2 months. And this is back in July, August. I knew I would only have 2 months to do it, and I was like, what can I do? What can I come up with that will be doable? And Riders of Eomer occurred to me as something that I tried to do before. I tried to do it for the GT a few years ago. I had the Riders of Rohan, or I had 2/3 of Riders of Rohan mostly painted. I had Gandalf and Eomer assembled and half painted, so I was like, I could probably do that. But what really sold me on it was this. For Throne of Skulls, every year I go all in as much as I possibly can. As you can see, I build a display board, I do fancy dress, I make custom dice for it, and I try and really get into the spirit of what makes Throne of Skulls what it is, and kind of really immerse myself in the theme. And I can't remember quite how or why, but I suddenly realised I was trying to make this board a few years ago and working out how I could make the sun, and it was going to be a piece of foam board that was lit up. And suddenly it occurred to me, I was like, well, what if I was the sun? And I was like, I reckon I could make a board that was about the right size, and if I was the sun, if the fancy dress was sun, I could be part of the display board. And that was what started it. I was like, yes, I could be the sun. I could see how the fancy dress would work. This was my headpiece. I didn't know about the suit for the rest of it. And then suddenly I was like, oh, my custom dice will be suns. And you could suddenly, in the same way I had the theme with the Arkenstone last year, I was saying like, yes, I get it. I can see it. I can see what the theme of the event would be. And so I kind of went with that. So the theming came before the army, basically. So then I had to make the army. Like little GBHL historians, I haven't said this, you might recognise where we are. I forgot to mention this. We are, of course, on the Palantir sofa. This is where I recorded my Throne Skulls review last year. And it's nice to be back here. I've once more co-opted my daughter's bedroom, but Tifa's over there. There he is, Tifa Triceratops. Some of the old cushions are here, so it's nice to be back, and hopefully some of you classic GBHL fans will enjoy have a warm nostalgic feeling about seeing the Palantir sofa in action again. It still lives on. But yes, so that's what I was going to do, and then I had to make a 1,000 point Rise of Eomer army. And as I think I said at the start of the last vlog, it's an army that writes itself. You take Gandalf, you take Eomer. You have to take Eomer. He has to be the leader. You don't have to take Gandalf, but you'd be mad not to, as the best rule in the Legion is dependent on you having Gandalf. At 1,000 points, there was never any question of me taking Erkenbrand, so he goes in. And then I went to my collection, and I had a mounted captain painted up, so I put him in, and I took my banner bearer, and then I filled the rest up with Riders of Rohan. I also then ended up giving, I think I took 9 red shields in the end, because I had 9 spare points. The red shield upgrade is a really interesting thing that I might come back to, that I think whilst it's handy, you would always be better giving more throwing spears. So it's one of those weird things that I think you give all your models throwing spears and then you start taking the red shield upgrade, which means up to a certain amount of points you're probably only ever going to have 1 red shield in your army, because you'll have 1 point left over at the end to make a red shield, whereas if you have 2 you'd give a throwing spear. So I think, generally speaking, the red shield upgrade will only come if you run out of throwing spear models. And so that's what happened to me basically. I totaled it all up, and I wanted to paint as few new Riders of Rohan as possible, and I managed to, I don't know how I got there, but I managed to find that by painting an X amount of Riders of Rohan from the sprues I had, I would be 9 points down, so I had 9 red shield upgrades. Also in the past I'd painted some red shields from the old edition when the red shield upgrade was better, and so some of those models were already red shields and I couldn't be bothered to repaint them. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to take these red shields, and I didn't really think about it then. It's only now reflecting on it after the event I was like, I think you'd always go throwing spears. But anyway, so that's how I built the army. I don't know, I was tempted to go for another captain instead of, say, 6 more riders, but that was mainly a painting thing. I actually think this is probably the correct build for the army at that points level. And also I ultimately decided that I just about had enough time to paint it, and I wanted as many riders as possible for it to look cool, not just for the in-game benefits of more models. I just thought the more riders I have on the board, the better. So that was the 1,000 point army that I went with, and which is pretty cool. Riders of Eomer, if you don't know, the rules are that Eomer has to be the leader. They all have to be cavalry models. You can have unlimited bows on your Riders of Rohan, so I've got 31 bows there. And friendly Rohan cavalry models within 12 inches of Eomer gain +1 strength on a turn that they charge. So I'm pretty sure, let me just check this, it's just a worse version of the normal Rohan bonus, isn't it? Because I think the normal Rohan bonus is anywhere on the table, isn't it? So the Rohan army bonus is, yeah, friendly Rohan cavalry models gain +1 strength on a turn in which they charge. That's the normal army bonus. So this one makes it all tied to Eomer. So they're worse for that. And there is no way for this Legion to get to fight 4. You don't have the kind of Arise Riders of Theoden type rule. There's no Arise Riders of Eomer. And there's no Royal Guard in the list. So all fight 3 across the board. And then they only have one more rule, which is look to the sun. Once per battle, so long as Gandalf is alive and in your force, you can declare that you are using this ability at the start of any friendly move phase. Until the end of the turn, enemy models that are engaged with or supporting a model engaged with any friendly cavalry models that made a charge that turn suffer a -1 penalty to their duel rolls. So sounds good, sounds very powerful, but it's once per game. And it's basically it's the sun. It's the sun coming up over the hill and getting all up in your business, and basically you get a kind of table-wide shade against any charging cavalry model. as long as Gandalf's alive. So that's why you need Gandalf in the Force, beyond the normal utility he brings. And so the key thing with this was trying to maximise that specific rule on that specific turn. I think it's also worth saying that I think they are considered underpowered. Like normally, their normal army bonus gets worse because it's only within 12 inches of Eomer, and if Eomer dies, they lose it, and they don't have the fight value bonus. So I think Riders of Eomer generally considered relatively underpowered. And that was part of the motivation for taking them as well. I know people don't like playing against Rise of Theoden, and I wanted to take a Rohan army that people would say, "Oh, that's cool. I don't see that a lot. That'll be fun to play against them," and that kind of thing. That was the thought behind it. And the final thought that I was really, really worried about was shooting. So I've got 31 bows here, and we're going to Throne of Skulls where you're trying to have fun with your opponent. And I was having a real moral dilemma, and I spoke about it to a lot of people in advance. Of like, how much can I shoot, or what should I shoot? Because Rohan armies are very, very good at what's called kiting, which is where you shoot and then you run away, and you shoot and run away, and shoot and run away, and then charge in and kill the dregs that are left. And obviously at Throne of Skulls, where your final placing is going to be determined by how much your opponents enjoyed the game, you can't do that. That's going to be miserable. But on the other hand, if Riders of Eomer just charge in with relatively low numbers because of Gandalf's point cost, and they're all fight 3, they're just going to lose. And so I was a bit worried going into the event, going, how am I gonna win games basically if I can't shoot, but I also can't charge in straight away? There's a tricky balance. And so my internal rule, and I was always like, I'm just going to take every game as it comes and see what happens. But my internal rule was, I will never ever back away from an opponent and shoot. That was my kind of rule to myself. I might shoot, I might stand and wait for them to come to me, but I would never run away from my opponent. That was always the rule. I would either have to be standing there at the top of the hill ready to charge, or moving towards them shooting, but I would never back away. And I hoped that based on the scenarios and based on my opponent's armies, that would at least provide a pleasant gaming experience, rather than an unpleasant gaming experience, if that makes sense, a negative play experience. So we'll see how that plays out throughout the game. So that's the kind of setup. That was my manifesto. As ever, the point at Throne of Skulls, what I was going for, was to try and get a best army nomination. I said this at the end of the last vlog. The only reason I put all this effort in every year is to try and get a nomination. I have been in the past very, very lucky, and I've got a lot of nominations over the year. I've only ever won Best Army once, which is in 2014. And I've kind of been chasing the dragon at Throne of Skulls for the past, there's been 5 Throne of Skulls events since it came back. And I've been trying to chase the dragon with my display boards. Can I win another Best Army? Can I win another Best Army? And whilst I was really, really hopeful for a nomination, I wasn't expecting, I didn't think this would ever win Best Army. It's very, very cool. You've seen it in the other vlogs. The slope and the magnets are kind of funky, and it works really well. I don't even know if you can see this, but I presume if you're watching this vlog, you've seen it from a bunch of different angles before. But they're all of these are magnetised on, and they're kind of riding down the slope. It's a cool idea, but the Riders of Rohan aren't painted particularly well, and the board itself is basically just a field. So I never thought I'd win Best Army this year, but I was hoping for the nomination. And if you watched my vlogs last year, you know I did my Erebor one, and I was a bit disappointed not to get nominated last year. So certainly getting a nomination wasn't any sort of guaranteed deal, and I was just hoping that it would all go okay. So that's the plan. In terms of wins, I had no idea what to expect. I don't think I'd ever used Gandalf the White before this event. So I was kind of, and I was getting in the car, and me and Tom spent a lot of time talking about our army, as I'll get to in a minute. And I didn't know how to use them. I certainly didn't know how to use the army. I didn't know the best utility for Gandalf the White. But I was like, well, let's see what happens. And I don't know, just hoping to win a couple of games basically. So that was my hope for the weekend, to go and have a cracking weekend with an army that looked like a lot of fun, that I'd enjoyed working on, and try and get a Best Army nomination. So. Finished at 3:30 AM the morning that we left on the Friday, and then inevitably, as is always the way, everything took longer than I expected it to pack up and get ready, and I ended up leaving at about 3 o'clock, I think it was, on Friday, which was about 2 hours after I wanted to leave. And I went to get my good pal Tom Harrison. What a legend that man is. And he lives an hour and 10 minutes away from my house, and I drove to get him, and it took me 2 hours to get him, and that was rank. You just drive from Twickenham to Oxford, and you don't expect it to take anywhere near that long, and getting to him at 5 p.m, knowing that we had to go on to knowing that we had to go into Nottingham from there, was pretty gross, if I'm honest. It wasn't great, but we necked a cup of tea, jumped in the car, and then headed up. And by that point, oh God, if the traffic continues to be this bad, we're not going to get there forever. And actually the traffic then onto Nottingham was fine, and it took us under 2 hours to get to Nottingham. And in that car journey, we just had a great time. We spent a lot of time catching up, and neither of us really knew what we were doing with our army. So in that, Tom has used Gandalf the White an awful lot in the past, and so was basically talking me through his spells. And it's all the kind of tertiary special rules that you kind of forget. Like his big thing was, I was like, oh yeah, well Glamdring's, Glamdring makes him strength 5, and he was like, don't forget that Glamdring's a elf blade and it's hand and a half. Those kind of things. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing I've forgotten. Shadowfax moves 12 inches. Those kind of things. The kind of rules around the obvious rules were the kind of things we were chatting about. And so he was reading through all the profiles for that, like what does Erkenbrand do now? What does Eomer do now? Those kind of things. And then similarly, Tom was using his Dale army, and Tom's Dale story is brilliant. If you look in SBG, I think it's in issue 12 in SBG Towers, there's a little thing called Groundhog Dale, where Tom started painting his Dale army a while back, and he decided to batch paint his Dale army, and that was 60 models or 58 models. And if you've seen my Dale vlogs, if you ever tried painting any Dale models, they are the most complicated models in the range, like the most complicated warriors. They're beautiful, beautiful models, but they are a slog to paint for all the details. And he painted 58 of them, I think it was, in one go, in one batch paint. And he's painted and painted and painted, and he finally finished the Dale army the day of the tournament. I was speaking to him on the phone as I was driving to his house, and he was still painting. And he painted them on so that was, whatever that was, Friday, November the 24th, 2023. And he started painting that Dale army in September 2022. His army had taken him 14 months to paint. He started batch painting it in September 2022, and as of Thursday, the night before Thrice Skulls, he didn't have a single Dale model finished. He didn't have one Dale model finished, and he finished that batch paint on the day of Thrice Skulls. So it was a heroic effort, and he was really pleased. And I have to say, they look beautiful. They're the best thing he's ever painted. It's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous army, and so. That was cool, and he was he'd spent all his time painting but didn't have a bloody clue what they were doing, so I'd used a bit of down the past, so then conversely I was going, well, this is what your army does, this is what the Windlance does, very, very little, this is what Bran does, this is what Bard does, so that was a lot of fun. And before long we got to Nottingham, and headed straight over to Water's Edge and met up with a bunch of lovely people. I will always forget some of them who were there, but I know we had dinner with Matthew Allen and Michael Haskell and Matt and John Davies. We just had a lovely little evening, just kind of hanging out and chatting. We had some Christmas food because they had their festive menu on, and then we joined a bunch of the other guys who were also there, like Cal and all. They kind of Chester lot were all there, and kind of met up with them and just chatted the night away and drank the night away. Just everyone suddenly really, compared to the night before where you're up till 3:30 in the morning painting. It wasn't Michael Haskell, was it? It was Mark Stone. I've just realised Stoney's probably watched this and been absolutely outraged. Sorry, Mark. It was Stoney who was there at our little table, and he'd flown over from Guernsey. Just chatting about the night before reminded me of that. But he, the night before you're up till 3:30 painting, and suddenly then the following night you're just sitting in a pub with your mates chatting and looking forward to a cracking weekend. So that was really good, and there ended up being a kind of table of about 20 of us by the end of the night, chatting the night away. So then we woke up bright and early, myself, Tom and Stoney, and we headed down for our breakfast, and then we had to be quite fast because I had to get back and I had to get into costume. I told you the sun was the driving force behind this. It turns out you can't buy stuff like this. I thought a sun headdress would be quite an easy thing to get hold of, but they only do them for kids. Who knew? It's quite hard to buy the sun fancy dress. So this work of art was created by my dear mother. I have to say a massive thanks to her. I gave her the brief several months ago, so it's not been a particularly stressful one. But it's been quite fun to see this come together, and she just did an absolutely blinding job. It's a fleece hood that goes over, and there's card inside these bits, and she just did a banging job of creating exactly what I needed, and it looks great, and it looks absolutely brilliant. So well done, Army Oban. And then the big decision was what goes underneath the sun, and am I all yellow, am I all shiny? And I was like, no, the sun needs to be up here, so this needs to be the sky, I presume. And I optimistically typed in sky fancy dress into Google, and this suit came up, cloud suit, which at the time was I think 30 quid off Amazon, and I was like, yes, that's exactly what I need. So I picked this up, and do you know what? I quite like this suit. It's quite handy, you know. For today, I was like, I'm going to put the suit on again. I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to wear this again, but it's actually quite a nice suit for 30 quid. It's not a bad fit, and I felt quite trendy in my sky suit throughout the weekend. And the final step in the process was, of course, face paint, which is always kind of something I like to do at Throne of Skulls. I think it's fun. And it was a fairly simple face paint this time, which was just painting my face gold, and then I needed glitter. And Mark Stone, who did a fabulous job of my glitter for the Arkenstone last year, was back on glitter duty and had great fun once again, blowing his glittery load all over my face in the shower. I think there's a photo which hopefully will come up here. But yeah, he took great pleasure in doing that once again in the morning. And I thought, all told, it looks pretty fantastic. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty happy with the finished effect. Love a bit of glitter, love a bit of face paint, and yeah, we were ready to go. I also noticed that throughout the weekend you could see which tables I've been on. By the amount of glitter on them. Someone, I won't say who it was, but someone told me that they could tell which cubicle in the toilet I'd been in because it was full of glitter. And as I've been setting this up again, my board, I'm not sure, I doubt any of this will pick up, but my board is certainly glittery. It's certainly more glittery than it was when I left for Throne of Skulls. So that was cool. So yeah, we headed off to the event. Got there and was, it was lovely to get it, the whole outfit seemed to get a really cool reaction, which was great. It's nice to see the efforts be rewarded. And then I started getting this out, and again, I'd left it all magnetised, as I showed you in the last vlog, overnight, and was confident in it. But it was still that slight element of getting it out and putting them on. I was like, yeah, it is all holding, it is working. And as I did that, lots of people were coming over and saying really nice things, which was cool. So thank you to everyone who wandered over and said nice things about the board. They really did mean a lot to me, and it's a cool idea that I'm glad I did, and I think has worked well, all things considered. What was also cool is seeing everyone else's stuff. I think I used the phrase an arms race in the last thread because the teasers just looked incredible, but my god, the hobby on display at Throne of Skulls is something else. It is just incredible, and the stuff that people had, the boards and the modelling and everything was just absolutely incredible. So yeah, it's another part of the reason this event is so cool, because people just go all out for the hobby. It's clearly a hobby event rather than a gaming tournament, which is class. So we quickly got drawn. I've got notes here, so I should be able to remember things. We got drawn for our first games, and I was delighted to play Ricky Robson-Shan and his Army of Thraw in game one. Never met Ricky. I think I might have met him in passing, possibly, but we didn't. We certainly haven't played. And we were going to play Divide and Conquer. Throne of Skulls played on 6x4 boards, and he had Army of Thraw. And so I had to say, both in terms of the scenario and in terms of the board size and matchup, this was a pretty good one for me. He had Divide and Conquer is one where you deploy. I'll use the screen up here to use my hands as the board because it's a rectangle. But your army is split into two and deploys in opposite corners. And for dwarfs, that's fairly terrible because he's got across a kind of 6-foot board diagonally. And so he had Thraw and his Grimhammer warband and Dwalin and some Warriors Variable up here, and then he had Thrain and some Warriors Variable and Thorin down here. So my choice was basically go for the leader, which was Thraw, along with a warband of Grimhammers with throwing weapons, or go for the non-leader characters without the throwing weapons. And ultimately, I decided to go for the non-leader. As much as it would be good to try and get the VPs for killing Thraw, I was really terrified about what 18 Strength 4 Grimhammers could do. Just charging in and hitting my horses. And so I was able to use the advantage of doing this towards one half of his army, where obviously my army is far, far faster. But to be fair, 6 foot is still a long way to go. So Erkenbrand immediately, I started seeing the advantage. Erkenbrand, he brings many advantages, but he's a named hero of Heroic March. So I had my my captain and Eomer, I think, up in this corner, and I had Gandalf and Erkenbrand in this corner. So I deliberately put a captain and I put a captain with one of the named heroes and Erkenbrand with the other named hero so that they both quarters had Heroic March. And then I used Erkenbrand to Heroic March across. I think I might have only done one. I might have done 2 Heroic Marches, but to kind of catch up while these dwarfs tried to get out of this corner. And we eventually managed to sort of, because of the nature of that, I didn't have to do much shooting. In my internal moral dilemma that I told you I was going to have in every game, I didn't get the opportunity to do much shooting because I was actually speeding towards this other army to try and kill them before the other dwarfs could get to me. And I did as I moved in. I think particularly with this warband, I did have a few shots down here because this warband was kind of waiting for this warband to try and catch up. I say warband, I mean half the army. And I managed to kill a few dwarfs, but not too many, and certainly to my mind, the shooting wasn't oppressive. And then I kind of, you bide your time, and eventually charged in to try and do some damage. And things went. I'm just trying to see what the photos I've got are, and I don't think I've got many photos from early on in the game, to be honest. But I'll hopefully put one up here, and you can. There's no point in even putting this up because it's so late. But things went pretty well, particularly with Gandalf and Erkenbrand down the bottom, who were able to kind of tear apart Thrain's warband. Whereas because it was that classic thing of both sides waiting for a heroic move, I was trying to prioritise this one to keep Gandalf moving to cast his spells, whereas which then meant Thorin's warband normally got to charge first against Eomer and get the jump over there. So kind of Ricky was winning this kind of fight over here, and I was winning this fight. And I can't remember the details, but I remember Thrain doing some spectacular resisting. I feel like he, I was trying to do the thing. I was just holding back, waiting till I could get him out of will, and then immobilise him and charge in and strike with either with Gandalf to kill him. And I feel like he resisted the first turn, then resisted with his second with 1 will, then resisted with 2 wills second turn, rolled a 6, and so got 1 back, and then in the third turn with it rolled his 1 and got a 6 and got it back. So I was getting really worried because I was like, at some point Thrain is going to get very, very, very angry and start killing everything if he's not immobilised. And he was doing really well. It was really, really funny, like the way he was able to kind of keep shrugging these things off. I remember one brave Rider of Rohan charged Thrain when all the other guys were more than 5 inches away to stop him kind of heroic combating. And the Rider of Rohan beat Thrain, and he knocked him down. He might have taken a fate point off, but that was Marvin, the glorious Rider of Rohan. He did really, really well. And I was also at this point waiting for the turn to use my Look to the Sun rule, and I was like, it has to be on a turn where I can charge with both. So whenever I was only charging with 1 with a heroic move, it was never worth calling because you needed to make it affect as many combats as possible. And eventually, he was really, really winning up here, and I feel like he trapped my leader. And I was thinking, oh, hang on, it's divide and conquer, so it's the objective game where the central objective is worth the most, and these other 2 small objectives on the outside are worth slightly less. And I was like, if he kills Eomer here, he's got this other dwarf army of Thrall wandering onto the objectives. I was like, I'm not winning this at the moment. As much as I'm winning the fight, I am not winning the scenario, and I'm in trouble here. And I feel like he, if I look at my stats, Eomer does take a wound. He's out of fate, and he's taken a wound. So he gets wounded, and it was by Thorin. Like Thorin, who's got a naturally better fight value than Eomer, was winning basically. I think they were both out of might, and Thorin was doing the work against Eomer, and I had no other way of dealing with Thorin. And I was sort of starting to panic up there. And then thankfully I was eventually able to take down Thrain. And then I started dealing with this new army of dwarfs, and as much as they'd spent the entire game walking towards the middle, they were now holding this objective over here and the central objective. And I was like, that's the game. Like, Ricky is absolutely winning this. And I kind of, I'd got rid of Thrain's warband down the bottom, so all those riders started moving into position to charge, and then I started moving some riders over from Thorin's kind of warband to just kind of leave. I can probably start putting a picture up, but you can see that there's a field over in the corner of over in the middle of the right side of the battlefield, and that's where the battle between Thorin and his riders was taking place. And the objective was on the other side of that field of the wall, and so I was able to use some riders here to just block in the remaining dwarfs and start sending some other guys over towards the middle of the battlefield. And I got all the models positioned, and then I basically waited until I lost priority and I called Look to the Sun and charged with everything I had onto as many models of his as possible where he couldn't countercharge. And it was just brutal. There was a ring of, I haven't actually got a photo of this, but there's a house with a red roof in the middle of the table, and there was a ring of Grimhammers, about 6 Grimhammers round that, kind of protecting the centre of the objective. And I managed to charge each and every one of them, and I think I killed them all because I looked to the sun. And it was something like, if you have a cavalry model charging with 2 dice against a single model with 1, even if they've got the higher fight value, when they've got a -1 on their dual roll, it's just devastating. And I think I probably killed somewhere in the region of 10 dwarfs or something in that turn. And that basically flipped the game, because I was then, the following turn, I was able to just charge into the middle, and not only did I have the charge bonuses and everything, but I think I then had more models in the middle, and I'd sent 1 brave exploratory rider scouting around the table, like kind of below that house with the blue roof, to challenge the other objective. And how does it end? Is it a 25% one or is it a breaking one? I think it's a 25% one. Let's have a look. No, it's gone. It doesn't exist. Divide and Conquer. Oh no, it is a breaking one. Maybe it was. I think it might have been a time thing then. For some reason I knew it was going to be the last turn, so maybe we were running out of time. And on what was clearly the final turn, I moved this 1 brave Rider of Rohan up to challenge that objective on the left, so that whichever way around, Ricky would only get the VPs for having more models rather than having exclusively models around that. So yeah, after 1 devastating turn, I don't think I'd have been able to kill Thrall in the end. I can't honestly remember. Maybe I did. He's still alive. But you can see here the final positions in the centre, where you've got loads of my riders kind of forming a protective ring. I think Erkenbrand killed Dwalin in the last turn. I think Dwalin just choked on his rolls, which was a bit of a bonus. But you can see there I've got quite a lot of riders, and there appear to be only maybe 4 dwarfs left. So I had more models in the centre. That objective out on the far side, Ricky had more than me, and you can see the objective on the right hand side, where you can still see Thorin fighting away there against Eomer, where he's wounded my leader, and he's still got 4 dwarfs left. There's 4 dwarfs left, but they're just being held up by a kind of pack of kind of 8 riders, whilst my rider next to the wall is kind of holding that other objective. So ultimately I was able to win 2 of the objectives. I think I'd broken Ricky and he hadn't broken me. Maybe we'd both wounded our leaders, but I was able to take a major victory from the first game, which was great. And far more importantly, I think we had a great game. Ricky was lovely, really, really nice guy. Lovely to meet him, and we had a lot of fun. It was a really cracking start to the tournament, and yeah, my Riders of Eomer were up and running for the event, which was class. Over lunch on the first day, we have the Legends painting competition where you get to enter something. And for the last 2 Warhammer World events, I haven't, because I've taken like B-Sun Gondor and my last Alliance stuff. But this time I did. I put Eomer in. I was super proud of my Eomer. As you would have seen in hobby vlogs, so I put him into the hero category, just to show him off a bit. We went and had lunch, which was lovely as ever, and I'm now sort of 3 hours into the event, and you know what? I was pretty comfortable. It's always a risk at Throwing Skulls when I dress myself up like a big old twat. You never know quite how you're going to feel, but this soft fleecy hood was alright, the face paint was fine, and the suit was kind of nice. So it wasn't a miserable experience. People kept saying, "Are you horribly hot in that?" And do you know what? It was alright. It was quite nice. So after that, for round 2, I got to play Dan Gregory at Whole Ground. Dan was someone else who I knew but had never played against. So that was really cool. And Dan had a beautiful last Alliance army with I'm just trying to remember the heroes. He certainly had Gil-galad and Elendil, and then I think he had Elrond as well. And then I think he might have had a captain, or he possibly might have just had those 3. I can't quite remember, but the beautiful amount of conversions, beautiful paint jobs on the army, and it was just a gorgeous army. And Dan was a super lovely bloke. I'm just skipping along to the photos here to see what we've got for deployment. So yeah, it's hold ground. And I was like, well, I might be alright here. I was terrified of Elendil and Gil-galad, but I was like, well, Gandalf will be able to shut down Gil-galad fairly easily. Elendil will be a problem because of Fortified Spirit, but with Elrond as well, there's 3 big heroes there, which will be a problem. But because it's whole ground, I was like, I should be able to get to the middle first because of my speed, and then maybe just kind of fight Dan off the objective. So that was the plan. So you can see here, I'll put this picture up. This is kind of deployment essentially. You can see that this isn't deployment. This is a couple of turns in. You can see that Dan's basically his whole army came on in that top right corner together. Most of my army came on in the middle of the kind of top longboard edge, and one warband was placed by Dan right in the far corner. So you can see them in the bottom left of the picture. It's my captain's warband, kind of desperately riding to the rescue. You might be able to notice right at the top there's a Rivendell Knight attacking one of those Riders of Rohan, and if you then, let's see if the picture will pan over, you'll see Elrond kind of cowering by a wall on foot, and that was because Dan had to deploy first, and I was able to bring Gandalf's warband on next to him, and I was able to blast a Rivendell Knight into Elrond, so that instantly got him off his horse, which is a kind of massive relief. We all know the importance of horses in SBG, and then the kind of game begins, doesn't it? And so I then started moving up into a fighting line, ready to kind of protect the middle. I was trying to move my riders, across this hill and kind of block the line. You can see the objective right in the middle of the table there, and I was trying to block the gap between the kind of ruins of Osgiliath there and the table edge. To kind of, that's where I was going to kind of defend the battlefield, and it went quite well. Dan charged Elendil and Gil-galad in really aggressively, kind of knowing that they were like relatively safe, and like charged them full on into the fray, and just started making a mess of things. And I was kind of, desperately trying to hold them off, and I was thinking, right, if I hold the middle, I'm all right. It doesn't really matter what happens to my leader, because I'll win on VPs. But Elendil and Gil-galad are just a terrifying prospect, and I remember gradually getting Gil-galad out of will, and then it was one of those turns where you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Do I try and, as I needed the spell to come off, and I didn't want to. I could Sorcerous Blast him, but I was like, there's a chance that spell won't come off on a 4+. I'm just going to immobilise him, which felt like a turn that I could deal with Elendil, and then I think the plan was if I immobilise Gil-galad, I can use Gandalf to strike against Elendil, kill Elendil, and then the next turn Gandalf's free to use his magic on Gil-galad, and I used 2 will to immobilise Gil-galad on a 2+, or on a 1/1. I was like, great success. So that made me panic. But again, I formed up this line to protect the middle, and called Look to the Sun, and it was just devastating. It was just absolutely devastating. I charged, and I found a really good secondary use for Look to the Sun, which is you expect it to be for killing. You expect it to be for the warriors, like it was the Grimhammers in the first game, where the warriors go down to, they can't win the fight, you knock them down, you kill them. But another super use of it was that I called it on a turn when both Gil-galad and Elendil only had 1 might left. And what it meant was they chucked their handful of dice, inevitably got a 6. That then became a 5. And because I had so many warriors on them, they had to use their last might to get up to a 6. So I was able to use Look to the Sun to drain Dan of his last 2 might points, which was really, really, really handy. And it suddenly, that unlocked another box from one. So, well, actually, Look to the Sun is a good way of killing heroes. If you've run out of heroic strikes, for example, what you can do is wait until a hero's out of might, and then a big enemy hero, whoever it is, Aragorn, let's assume he's used his free one, probably a terrible example, but Aragorn, Boromir, Eomer, Gil-galad, Elendil, Glorfindel, if they're out of might and you call Look to the Sun, they can't get a 6, and then your chaff, your Riders of Rohan can charge in, roll a 6, and kill them in one go. And that was a kind of interesting little kind of that's a good little tip. As it was, I actually used it deliberately to try and draw the last 2 might points so that he couldn't then heroic move, and that's exactly what happened. He rolled the 6, went down to a 5, and had to use both might to keep his 2 heroes alive. But what that then meant was after that he had no might to call heroic moves, and my captain and Erkenbrand, who were great little might batteries, were just amazing at just keeping those heroic moves going, and to ensure that I could always charge then. And after that, I can't remember if I killed. I feel like I didn't kill Elendil, but I was able to eventually get Gil-galad essentially once he was out of might and out of will, and I started kind of just forcing a ring across the around the objective, and we can hopefully see here. This is towards the end of the game. Yeah, you can see Elendil. No, it looks like Elendil did go down. You can see Gandalf there fighting against Elrond, and it was on the last few turns. You can see that I've kind of comfortably got the models on the objective. But I realised suddenly that Gandalf didn't matter anymore, and so I sent Gandalf in with his extra attacks and with his elf blade and stuff to attack Elrond. And I think Elrond might have been the leader. I think that's why I did it. I think I sent Elrond in to be the leader, to get some leader for a chance of getting some leader VPs with no risk of my VPs. And I think he did it. I feel like Gandalf against all the odds just won, despite having a lower fight value and less dice. I think he won and knocked him down and got a wound on Elendil as memory serves. Elrond as memory serves. But yeah, so it was cool. Did I? Do you know what? I think maybe I didn't kill Gil-galad. I just realised that he was blasted off the hill, but he doesn't appear to be there. Maybe I did manage to get him. I can't quite see him. But you can see the kind of finishing positions there. And the other thing I learned in this game was how important Erkenbrand is to this list. That not only is he 3 might, not only does he have heroic march, but the horn, the +2 courage for Rohan. It's all Rohan models, so it doesn't affect Gandalf, but it gets +2 courage across the board. Let's just check the wording on this. A warhorn that adds +2 courage to Rohan models. So it means that Erkenbrand is courage 6. It means Eomer is courage 7, and it means your base Riders of Rohan are courage 5. So I noticed in this, when trying to charge Elrond and trying to charge Gil-galad because they cause terror, they were basically all making it. There was no one was struggling because I had courage 5 Rohan. I was like, that is good. He's adding a lot of value, and then not only that, but he's a banner effect for red shields. So I was trying to keep his red shield warband around him and was using that banner effect a few times as well. And he's a 5/5 hero, so he was amazing. But yeah, as you can see, it had gone my way. I was lucky enough for the game to have gone my way, and I managed to get a major victory against Dan, who was just lovely, just the loveliest bloke, and took it, a game going quite against. It was a tough draw for him, and he had some rotten luck throughout it. But he was just a super lovely guy. He just took everything with a smile. We seemed to have a great game, and we had just a lot of chatter. It was a very relaxed game. When it's whole ground, it's the breaking and ending on 1 or 2. You know that you're going to get through it in 2.5 hours. So there was never any kind of clock pressure or anything. And it was just lovely. A really top game. And not only was I delighted to be on 2 wins after 2 games, I was delighted to have had 2 lovely games against 2 lovely guys. So after that, I got to play Sean Lang, who I had played before, and I've never beaten. He beat me at Throne of Skulls in 2019 in the final round, and he beat me at the GT on stream when I played Destroy the Supplies really badly. I made a terrible mistake on the internet in front of everyone, and I didn't understand how the scenario worked. I thought it was going to be like you need to hold the supplies. You go next to them and stand next to them. And so when he sent one guy up to attack one, I went, well, fine, stand near it, and I'll kill you next turn. And he just destroyed my supply. And I was like, well, that's the game over then, because I'm not getting yours. So that was a dreadful misplay. But yeah, lovely bloke. And we played Ill Met by Moonlight. And Sean, who's a very good player, a very competitive player, but he'd clearly was throwing skulls and he was chilled out, and his army was a super kind of nice themey army of Gothmog. Didn't have the catapult, so it didn't have that element that forces you to split up and potentially makes you enjoy the game less. But he basically had all the named heroes. I think he had 6 named heroes. All 4 of the named like kind of 4-drop ones, plus Gothmog, plus a shaman. I think he had a Mordor, he had a drummer troll, and then he had a billion Morannon orcs. I think he had 50 orcs or something. And looking at it, because it's Ill Met by Moonlight, it nerfs shooting, which was again helpful for me, because I was like, okay, so now I can't shoot him from distance and make it unpleasant. I can only shoot him at 12 inches. But I also get +1 to shoot, and I thought this will be. I thought this is a decent matchup. It's like if I get the charge here and look to the sun, and he's only moving 6 inches, I should be able to get this. I can charge in and do a lot of damage. Possibly after one round of shooting, one round when the army's close, shoot for one turn, and hopefully do quite a lot with the +1 to wound. And we were both talking about our one turn rules that. I had this Look to the Sun, which could win me the game in one turn, and he had whichever Gothmog's one is it the Age of Men is over or the Time of the Augurs come, whichever is the one that you re-roll all failed wounds against men. And we were like, whoever's once a game rule comes off is going to win. And so I moved up, and I feel like I had one turn of shooting that did all right. I think I killed a bunch of models. In fact, maybe I wasn't even able to shoot with bows. Would that have made sense? Maybe I was. Maybe it was only. I feel like I only got a few shots with throwing spears for some reason. They can shoot 8 instead of 6. Maybe I don't know. I feel like maybe I moved first. Maybe he had moved first, and if I moved, I don't know. There were more than 12 away. I can't remember. But I remember I got very lucky with Gandalf. He was able to sorceress blast. I want to say Gurrits into his orc shaman. Wound Gurrits and nearly killed the shaman, or maybe the other way around. It was like the shaman survived on 1 wound with no fate, and obviously if he had died, I'd be ahead, because it's all about Ill Met by Moonlight. It's all about killing enemy heroes, and so that was kind of good. And then in the next turn, and I wouldn't say I know what you'd expect to do almost, but Sean had 2 options. I think he got to move first, and what Sean could have done is move away and not be charged by me. He had no shooting, so it wouldn't have necessarily helped him that much, but he could have moved away and then waited for the classic priority thing where I get to move first, so he comes up there and then maybe gets to move again in the next turn and charge. That old adage. But instead, Sean laughed hysterically and said, "It's throwing a skull," and moved his entire army up to within an inch of my army. And there's a photo here, and it looked absolutely phenomenal. I mean, look at that; it looks incredible. It's like the Charge of the Pelennor or the Riders of Eomer, but with Morannons instead of Uruk-hai. And just having, I think it's quite rare that you see that the whole army's lined up like that, about to fight. And it was just brilliant. And I was kind of like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he was like, "It's up to you. Do your worst." And he kind of said, and at that point, of course, I could, if I wanted to, I could back away and shoot him. I could back away and shoot 31 shots with +1 to wound, but I just couldn't. Beyond my own, what I'd said at the start, I'm not going to move away from anyone. I was like, how could you possibly do that when someone has basically invited you to just wreck their army? And it was like, go on then, see what you can do. And you can call Look to the Sun, it's your friendly move phase. So this is the other thing, I can call Look to the Sun now, having seen how he's moved. And so I was like, all right, and I was like, thank you, Sean. And I basically said to him at that point, I was like, it's one of the most sporting things I've ever seen anyone do in a way. It's like, it's so Throne of Skulls, and it completely threw me, because of all the moves you can make, it was what I wasn't expecting. I was like, all right. So I called Throne of Skulls, and I called Look to the Sun, and I charged every one of my models into his army, and I blitzed him. Made a note here, I killed 22 Morannon. This was turn 2, and I killed 22 Morannon orcs with the charge. I just knocked him down and ruined his line. And also, I completely saw the red mist, and I called 4 heroic combats, because I was like, let's make the most of this. And I was like, all of my heroes are going to kill 2 orcs. All 4 of my heroes are going to kill 2 orcs. So that's 8 dead. And if they all call heroic combats, they'll charge into 2 more orcs, the second rank, and kill another 2, and that's then 8 dead orcs. And so I just went mad, and I called 4 heroic combats. And as it turned out, Sean, who's a very good competitive player, playing in, it was a really fascinating thing to see someone playing in super good spirits, but still clearly knowing exactly what they were doing. And against my heroes who were at combat, he backed away in such a way that because the battle line and the combats have to go first, I could only charge 1. And every time he did it, I kind of went, that's clever. And because there's a combat on either side of them, they can't go into both of those combats, because they'd be split off into one-on-ones. And so suddenly I was like, so actually I'm not going to kill an extra 8 orcs, I'm going to kill an extra 4 orcs. And then Gandalf whiffed his combat and lost, and so he didn't kill any orcs. So suddenly I was like, right. And at the end of the heroic combats, I'd spent 4 might to kill 3 orcs. And I was like, that was a mistake. That was a massive, massive mistake. And Sean played it brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly, like really careful positioning. And I just completely lost my mind. I was like, what have I done? I was like, I didn't, even if it went well with 8 orcs, I didn't need the extra 8 orcs. But I just seen this chance to do it. And I was sort of like, okay, I was like, I'm probably all right there because I've just killed all the orcs. And I'd nearly, he wasn't broken, but I'd nearly broken him in a single turn. And then the next turn comes around and suddenly he fought back. And what had happened is even worse. Where I'd charged forward with my heroes were then ahead. The heroes are the most valuable like models in my army, and he was able to get the jump on them. I can't remember how the right moves like worked out, but he was able to basically kind of jump on all my heroes, and he was able to trap Eomer. No, I must have got to move next turn, and I deliberated for ages about Eomer. All of his heroes were safe. All of his heroes were in the kind of back rank, and there was still the kind of second rank of his orcs which were alive, which were kind of blocking them. And I charged to try to kill 2 for the next turn. And I remember this little orc being the absolute hero who I just basically missed. There was just an orc who'd climbed over some ruins. I don't know if I've got a photo of it. Have we got any more? Yeah, you can see him. He's in that one. This is obviously before the disastrous turn for Sean. But if you have a look in the middle, can you see in those orc ruins there were 3 orcs kind of who've climbed over the ruins onto the steps, and you can see where Eomer was. This is before the charge. Now imagine that basically the whole front rank of those orcs are all dead, and Eomer charges in again. One of those orcs, who had somehow just missed, ran around the back and trapped Eomer. And I was like, oh God. And suddenly Eomer, my leader and one of my best chances for killing his heroes, is in all sorts of trouble. And then he calls the time with the orc is new, and then he had just the best turn in revenge, and he was able to trap Eomer and kill him. And I was really annoyed at myself that because the game was just hysterical and was just so much fun and felt very, very cinematic, and people doing like what they should be doing rather than what you'd tactically do, just always charging forward. It was what would Eomer do, what would the orcs do, all that kind of stuff. What kind of happened was when that fight phase started. I didn't even realise, but Erkenbrand was just fighting one orc and he charged next to Eomer's combat. So Erkenbrand absolutely could have called a heroic combat, killed his orc probably, and then charged in and untrapped Eomer. And I just didn't call it. I just didn't see it. And it was only after Sean had performed about 3 heroic combats, and we got to Eomer's combat, and I looked at it, I was like, I see that I could have saved him very, very easily. And it was just, it's a bit annoying to realise you've just mucked up, but equally I think it's a testament to the kind of game we were having, where it was just like so much fun and super chilled out that you're just not even paying attention. And I was just more laughing at how hysterically Eomer had been trapped. And then he had hatred, he had that filthy 3 attack, Zagdish is it, I think, on him, who went up to strength 5 with his special rule, so he was only needing 5s. Then he had hatred, so he needed 4s, and then he was re-rolling all failed wounds, and he wrecked Eomer. They killed Eomer. I was like, oh well, that's unfortunate. And then maybe a couple of turns later or a turn later, suddenly it had all gone wrong, and this disastrous turn from the orcs had somehow helped them, and they were able to. I think Gothmog and a troll were able to get onto Gandalf and kill him. And suddenly I'm like, right, so now I'm out of might. Do you know why I was out of might? Because I spent 4 of it on 4 heroic combats to kill 3 orcs. And suddenly you're like, you don't have Eomer and you don't have Gandalf, so he's killed more heroes, and you need to kill enemy heroes with very little chance of doing it. And I did break him. I did manage to break him, and so suddenly then the whole thing was based on, will the heroes run away? Gothmog was right over the other side, so his stand fast that affects heroes wasn't affecting the heroes. And I was like, mate, it's possible that if he just chokes a few of these over a couple of turns, I'll pull it back. But alas, it wasn't to be. And I wasn't able to nab any. I might have got a couple of his heroes. I can't honestly remember, but certainly not any of significance. And I've got a picture here of the final kind of positions, and you can see that I think Erkenbrand. There's a kind of Erkenbrand shaped hole next to Zagdish and Gorolth. Gandalf's down. My captain survived. You can see the captain over there in all sorts of trouble against the troll and Gothmog. But as you can see, they have truly turned the tide, and there's only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11. There's about 13 riders left, probably about a similar number of orcs. But Sean had killed all the heroes, which is what turns the game. And what was amazing was, afterwards I was like, have I been played? it felt like Thorin going up to Ravenhill. Have I just absolutely taken the bait? And Sean's going to go, why don't you just wreck my entire army and I'll beat you anyway? And I was like, I think he's just done fabulously well. And you know, completely fair play to Sean. He did the most sporting thing I'd ever seen, and then wrecked me because he did it. And I was just saying afterwards, I shouldn't have called the heroic combats. And I honestly think if I don't call those 4 heroic combats, I probably win that game like quite easily. But I got so the red mist descended. And I said to him afterwards, I was like, and I don't want to admit that, I gave Sean one of my most sporting votes because I was like, almost irrelevant of the other games. The way you've played that was in such spectacularly good spirits. You because even if he was hoping that would happen, he had no guarantee that would happen. He had no guarantee that I'd let Eomer get trapped, that I'd call for heroic combats, that I'd miss a heroic combat with Ercremant. You know, those are a lot of mistakes on my part. And he was like, well, there you go, we'll have a fun game, we'll have some fun game and see what happens. And it was just wonderfully sporting. So full fair play to Sean because he played it in the absolute best spirits and it came off for him and he won. So ended day 1 on 2 major wins and a major loss. And I was, you know, you offered me that at the start of the day, I would have taken it. But equally, I was a bit disappointed because I was like, I should have won that 3rd game. I should have won that. And you're like, okay, so fair enough. And I've always said that to pretty much, if you're going to win Throne Skulls, you need to win 4 games. It's still a Swiss rank tournament. You get points for your favourite game and your favourite army votes. But you still, to win it, you need 4 or 5 wins. And suddenly, when you're only on 2 wins and with 2 games to go, you're kind of like, oh, well, is that it? Is that the chance gone? But we headed into Spugman's. And had their traditional evening food of the burger van thing, which was lovely. And then we did the quiz, which was amazing as always. Joined up with a mighty quiz team. I don't want to forget anyone, so I will scroll through our little team picture that we took. Where are we? Ooh, lots of photos coming in from my wife of the kids that evening. So we had Nick Bramwell, Sam Huddy, Phil Beale, Mark Stone, Tom Harrison, James Wilson, Tim Garlett, Andy Hamlin, and myself. All made a mighty quiz team. And it was loads of fun. I took the headpiece off for the evening and I kind of went as trendy son to Bugman's. I felt like I was off to some sort of new wave disco in the 80s, which I thought was quite a good look. And we managed to win the quiz. Oh, woo! We were super delighted to do that. It was great fun as ever. Jay wasn't there, but he'd written the quiz, and we had that. I won't go into the full details of it, but we had that fabulous round again, which is brilliant, which was started last time, which is where one of your team goes out, and then you have to try and give the same answers that they give to the same question. So this time Tom went out, so I felt a lot of pressure to kind of get his answers right, and there was questions like. What's your favourite narrative scenario? And we got that one right. It was Balin's Tomb for him. Who's the best made up character for the films? And we both said Tariel, obviously, so we got that. Who's the most underrated hero? And I said Gandalf the White, because Tom really rates Gandalf the White and doesn't think he's that good, and he's loved him for years, so we managed to get that one right. I was trying to think of what the others were. Oh yes, he said if you had to be in a doubles partnership with one person on your team, who would you pick? And you know, we wrote. Oh, I've got the answers. We put me. I was like, you better, so you say me. So we got that right. It was what's the best evil army in army list in the game, and I put Azog's Hunters for him. I thought he'd go with Azog. You couldn't pick a legendary legion, otherwise he would have picked Pits. And he went Azog's Legion. So close. So we got that one wrong. Narrative scenario was that there was name a 3 attack 2 wound hero, and we had a bit of debate because I was like, it's Tariel, you got it right, Tariel, and the guys were like, but he's using Bard the second. I was like, and it was kind of like, yeah, he is, so that'll be in his head. So we wrote Bard the second, and he only went as bloody said Tariel, didn't he? So we got that one wrong. Gandalf the White was the underrated hero. There was who has the best sword, in the best looking sword in the game, and again people were suggesting that he'd say Glamdring because of Gandalf or Herogrim because of Theoden. And I knew that Tom won Orcrist at the Nova Open, and he's got Orcrist hanging on his wall. I was like, it's going to be Orcrist. It's absolutely going to be Orcrist, even though it might not necessarily kind of look like the best sword potentially. I was like, he sees it every day. It will be the sword that comes to his mind, and I have really good memories of it. There was also a bunch of pictures of Gandalf, and it was which is the best Gandalf pose, and I knew that Tom's favourite character was Gandalf. He's written an article about it, and I was fairly sure it was the cart one, so we got that right. Name a hobbit who is not in the films. We wrote Fatty Bolger because it's a sensible answer. Tom yelled knob into the microphone, I think because he wanted to yell knob into the microphone. So we got that one wrong. Then it was the character from the film, which was Tariel, which we got right. And it was, which, if you had to invite one member of Thorin's company round for tea, who would it be? And we put Barlin, and he did that. So I think, I can't actually see our marks, but I think we got 7. Yeah, I think we got 7 out of 10. Which we were impressed with, and from Tom's point of view, it was like, well done, Tom. We all had a big group discussion about what we were going to write. But Tom's under pressure to get them right, so getting 7 out of 10 was pretty damn good. Well played, Tom. So then we headed back to the Holiday Inn. I ran up to the hotel. I ran up to our room and took the face paint off, so I didn't look like a complete fool in the Holiday Inn bar. Still had quite a lot of glitter on my face, but wasn't quite as noticeable from a distance that I was bright yellow. And we just had a lovely evening again, just hanging out with people, lots of us being, just reflecting on a cracking day. There was a meme that I think was made by Joe Holzman that was on the GBHL, which I put up here, which is lovely. It's the classic office thing of corporate needs to find the difference between the picture and this picture, and they're the same picture. So it's nice to take inspiration from the Teletubbies. So yeah, and then we headed off to bed after a frankly spectacularly good day at Throne of Skulls. And then we woke up and it all started again. Same deal. We woke up a bit late this time. Down to breakfast. Had that up to the room. Mark Stone blows his glittery load all over my face. And I think more glitter this time. This is the day 2 start. I think I just kept screaming more glitter, and Mark was like, "You've got enough glitter." I was like, "No, not enough glitter." And as we can see, when we got to Warhammer, Mark Stone was only on table 1. Mark Stone, who by his own admission, I think would say is not necessarily a top table gamer, had won all 3 of his games on day 1. So huge congrats to my fellow wanderer Mark Stone, and he was on table 1, and so he was saying that he was flying too close to the sun, and so we took a picture of him flying too close to the sun. And then my first game of the day was against the wonderful Tim Garlick at To The Death, which was great. I love Tim. He's a super lovely bloke, and so I was like, great, another wonderful person to play against, which is the main thing. To The Death, decent. I've got a banner. I've got a way of killing leaders. I've got a good chance of breaking an opposition. And Tim had another Last Alliance army, but it was built slightly differently. He again had Elendil and he had Gil-galad, but he also had a Númenórean captain and he had Círdan. And so we immediately realised we were both going to be in the kind of, oh god, you've got blinding light camp. And so what have we got here? I think we've got a deployment picture. No, that's a different game. Do we have a deployment picture? Do I not? I don't think I've got any pictures. I'm not taking any photos. I don't think I took any photos of Tim's game. Nightmare. Sorry, Tim. But we deployed kind of 12 inches on base, basically both thinking we'll try our shooting, and both popped blinding light up. But by the nature of Tim's army, his blinding light, I think Círdan had come on. Oh, I've got no pictures to illustrate this. Círdan had come on over here, and he had some stuff over here. So I was able to shoot at these guys and get a few early kills, and so was slightly winning that shooting war. I was like, okay, well that's all right. And he couldn't do too much in return because I had a channel blinding light up. First time I'd done channel blinding light. It's the first time I was kind of really worried about the enemy shooting. So it was nice to have that utility. It's also worth saying that so far it's the 4th game where Gandalf, with the exception of Elrond and Círdan have got spells, but they're not the kind of proper magic that you fear. But I didn't have to cast Fortify Spirit to protect anyone from magic. I didn't have to banish any spirits, and I didn't have to use your staff is broken. So it's quite handy that the first time using Gandalf the White, 3 of his kind of spells were taken out of my hands, as it were, and it was mainly a decision between Blinding Light, Immobilize and Sorcerer's Blast, like for the most part. But Tim then started coming forward, and he was using this block of ruins in the middle of the table to kind of protect himself. But I was still, just through the number of bows, I was able to get a few kills. And again, the good news is I think the blinding light hopefully made the shooting less oppressive, because despite the fact I had a large number of bows, I was only killing a couple of guys a turn. And Tim ultimately realised that his blinding light was doing less than mine, and he'd have to commit. And so he offered me he offered me, I think, 2 elves. On one turn, he kind of put 2 elves in charge range and was like, go on. I was like, this is not enough. I'm not going to charge like in, kill 2 elves and then be ganked. And then the next turn, he offered me a warband. And there was 10 models that came forward. And I was suddenly like, oh. And, you know, because it's Last Alliance, he only had maybe 30 models. And I really, really agonised over whether or not to take the bait that turn. And I ultimately decided that it was a good trade-off. So I charged in and I called Look to the Sun. So it was far less models in combat than normal, but he had far less models in his army. And in total, I've got a note of it here, I managed to kill 10. I killed 10 Last Alliance models on the turn that I called Look to the Sun, which, whilst being far less than 22 Miranda Naughts, is a massive chunk of his army. And that was really, really good, and suddenly left me in a very commanding position because Tim was, then close to breaking. And Elendil and Gil-galad was kind of at the back, and I think I was able to kind of trap him with a Rider of Rohan at one point, and he still heroic combated him over to get into the fight. I think I'd managed to get rid of his will early with protecting himself against the Sorcerer's Blast, so Gandalf was kind of safe behind a bunch of riders casting spells, and Gil-galad I knew I could deal with Gil-galad, but Elendil, again, with Fortified Spirit was a massive, massive problem. And so, thankfully, I feel like, how did he do it? He wasn't getting his charge bonuses because my army's cavalry, so that was a help. But he tragically whiffed his rolls. I remember Elendil charged in and he got like 3 highest or something. And so my Riders of Rohan won, and I had like 3 guys on him or something. I was doing that thing where you put 3. It's really agonising when you're playing Elendil. If you put 1 on, he's obviously going to heroic combat into 2 and kill 3. So you can kind of almost guarantee that he'll kill 3. But if you put 3 guys on him, he might kill all 3 of them, and then charge into another 2 and kill him. So you have this really horrible situation of how do you deal with it. And I was putting 4 on, which meant he couldn't heroic combat. So if you feel like he's fighting 1 and he charges into 2, he kills 3. He's going to kill 3 anyway, so risking 3 isn't a problem. So you put a 4th one onto him to mean that he can't possibly heroic combat and cause any more trouble. And so I did that, and he lost the fight. He got a 3 highest. And I was like, nah! And I didn't go fit him, but I managed to kill his horse, which again slightly reduces his movement and his damage output. And it also means if I charge him, I can knock him down if I get lucky. And I think he then whiffed another roll as well. So Elendil, who he really needed to turn up, just wasn't doing the work for him, unfortunately for Tim. And we got into this, I've just got off my phone, we don't have any pictures. We got into this kind of really, really thrilling climax where I'd broken him, but I want to say I was, at the start of the turn, I was 5 models away from breaking myself. And Tim was 4 models away from 25% in. So we were in this point where in the same turn, if I killed 4 models, the game would end and I'd win. If Tim killed 5 models, it would probably be a draw. And so I suddenly started looking for insurance, and that was a banner. I'd managed to kill one of his banners, and he had 1 more and I had 1 banner. So if I killed the banner, I'd get the banner VPs. And I debated for ages with Gandalf, do I Sorcerer's Blast Gil-galad and try and get a wound on his leader, which would help me win? Or do I think I was immobilising the banner so he couldn't move or something. There was it was basically, do I use his magic to, it's Sorcerer's Blast, or do I Sorcerer's Blast the banner and try and kill it? So I went for that, went for the Sorcerer's Blast, and after all that, I feel like the spell didn't come off. I don't think I even got a chance to wound him, which was wonderful. So Gandalf ends up charging in, and I think Gandalf was fighting the banner at the end, and it was all very complicated in the middle. And I think in this one thrilling turn, Tim did break me, and so it was tied. It was a draw, I think, and it all came down to whether or not I killed the banner. And the banner was like on the penultimate dice roll, and I managed to kill the banner, which kind of made me think, oh, I've just clinched a kind of victory. And then the last fight was Gil-galad fighting against 4 Riders of Rohan, and Gil-galad, despite having 3, he might have even shielded. I think he shielded. And had Lord of the West, had 7 dice, or had 4 dice, and he whiffed, lost, and my Rise of Rohan wounded his leader, which got me a VP, and we were all like, oh, that's really disappointing, because it's taken all the tension out of the banner. So as it turned out, I was able to get a kind of unfairly large win against Tim, because I think we were both broken. I 25%ed him, I had a banner, he didn't, and I wounded his leader, which ended up, I can't remember the VPs, but it ended up with a major win to me. But it was a brilliant game. We both said it was so good because we both had the opportunity to shoot off, and it if one of you stands back and shoots and has blinding light, it's a dull game for the other person. But because both of us did, you had this kind of very, very tactical shoot off that wasn't really making a negative play experience for either of us. And then this second phase where we moved and negotiated, and then had a big scrap in the middle, and then it all came down to this absolutely thrilling final turn. I remember we had these ruins of Osgiliath, where we had our final turn casualties. You know, when they put them in on Warhammer World, they assemble the ruin. They have the two kind of roofs, and his casualties where he needed his 5 were there, and my casualties where I needed the 4 were here. And it was just a absolutely delightful end to the game, and I loved it. So thanks to Tim for an amazing game. We then had lunch, and then we went into the final game of the event, and I was on 3 major wins. And I was like, I remember what I said. I was like, if you get 4, you've got a chance. And I got to play Sam Barker, who I'd never played before, but we'd met. He used to work at Warhammer World, I think, so we just met in the shop before, I think. And he was an absolutely delightful bloke, and he had, frankly, quite a scary army for mine, where he had the Witch King on Fellbeast. He's got his staff is broken, he's got sap wheels to deal with Gandalf. He had Suladan, who's a meaty hero, and he had a Mummock. So it's almost like the very, very competitive build of the Witch King and Suladan, but then with a Mummock for Throne of Skulls fun. So he had a Mummock with like 5 guys in the Beastmaster, and then he had a bunch of Morannons and Harad. And I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified. I was terrified that I was like, if I charge full on forward, you've seen the Mummocks at the Pelennor, right? You know what they can do. And I was like, if I lose that heroic move roll off, he'll destroy my army in one go with that Mummock. He'll just trample through everything. Not to mention what the Witch King can do. So I thought, well, it was what was the game? It was domination, and so I'm going to have to push up. But you can deploy 12 inches on. So I was like, right, I'm going to see what he does. So I was 12 inches back, and he went really quite aggressive with the Mummock and moved it forward. Now he had 5 Harad guys and the Beastmaster in the Haldar, and I suddenly thought the only way I can deal with that without risking a heroic move roll off is if he can't heroic move that Mummock, which means the Beastmaster's dead. And I thought, for whatever reason, because the Harad guys were defense 4, I was like, actually, I'll try and kill them first. And my plan was get rid of the crew in the Mummock, at which point it has to take a courage test every turn. So I shot everything I had into the Mummock's Haldar, and was able, over 2 turns, I was able to kill all the Harad guys, and the Beastmaster was down to, it might have even been 1 turn, I think in 1 turn the Beastmaster was down to 1 wound, no fate and no might. So he rolled a 2 for his final fate point, and had to use both. No, he did 1 to heroic march. He heroic marched forward, that was it, and then he rolled a 3 for his fate. So the shooting had been really, really effective in terms of the game, but had only killed 4 guys, if that makes sense. Meanwhile, his orcs are kind of moving forward and all that sort of stuff. And then in the next turn, I was like, right, I've got 1 more turn. That guy is on 1 wound, no fate, and I fired 31 shots at him, and I didn't kill him, which was beautiful, beautiful karma. I thought, I was like, and again, it was wonderful because I used the shooting, but it achieved very little. Now it did achieve. I'm not going to underestimate. It did take the might point, so it stopped him being able to heroic move with it, but it killed 4 Harad guys, which ended up having no bearing on the game beyond getting him 4 models close into breaking. But it did make him use a might point on his fate to remove the Mummock to have a kind of 50-50 roll off. But it, again, coming out of it, I was like, that's not bad for the shooting, in that what my shooting's done for those 2 turns is only kill 4 guys, as it were. So hopefully it didn't feel too oppressive for Sam. But then because of that, I was then like, well, I'm going to have to deal with it the old-fashioned way. Thankfully I had no might. So Eomer and Erkenbrand, I'm just going to see what photos I've got here to bring up. Eomer and Erkenbrand charged basically at it. You can see deployment there actually. I might have put that one up already by now. Yeah, so you can see that Eomer and Erkenbrand are over on the left, kind of facing the Mummock, and they charged in. The Mummock was now base fight 4, I think, so Eomer and Erkenbrand would win the fight against it. And they charged into it, and basically over a couple of turns, it's sitting on a objective. I think you can see that green objective that was in front of the Mummock. That's where the fight took place. So the Mummock was sitting straight on top of one of the objectives, and over a long period of turns, because the Mummock was over on the left, I was able to attack it with lots and lots and lots of dice, and it took about 3 or 4 turns, but eventually I chewed through it. Eomer was great because he was wounding it on 5s. I think it was defense 7. He was strength 5 when he charged, which was cool. Same with Erkenbrand. And a piercing, striking Rider of Rohan would also be strength 5. So I was eventually able to chop it down, thankfully. And then across the rest of the battlefield, the Witch King sort of launched an attack on Gandalf. He cast I think it was a channeled sap will actually at Gandalf, which got through, but then he only rolled a 1, and I was almost kind of heroically disappointed for him. I was like, Gandalf had Fortify Spirit up this time, but he cast a big sap wheel, a channel sap wheel, got through, and then he only rolled a 1 for the wheel point, and I was like, oh, that's disappointing. Not for me, but certainly for Sam. And so yeah, and then he charged the Witch King in, and I just took a punt. I think for whatever reason, I didn't want to call Look to the Sun, because the Witch King was the only one in combat. I think I've actually got a photo of this kind of epic showdown here. And so I had this. Where are we? That's the end. I'm sure I've got a photo. Yeah, here we go. So the Witch King kind of charged in, and into some riders, and I was like really debating back and forth, and I ended up chucking Gandalf in, and it was going to be a heroic strike off, but I figured Glamdring had the best chance of winning, and it was either that or let the Witch King win and potentially hurl and barge, or waste Look to the Sun on a single turn. I think I obviously tried to immobilise him or something, and the spell didn't come off. He resisted it. So I went, yeah, it's throwing skulls. Sam's playing for the spirit. He's charged the Witch King in. Let's charge Gandalf in. Might get Gandalf killed. Might kill the Witch King. We'll have to see what happens. So we had this great, wonderful showdown, like the film, like Return of the King, where Gandalf the White's facing down the Witch King. And thankfully, it was just the heroic strike went my way. I can't remember quite what happened, but I think Sam rolled quite low for his. I was able to get the fight value, and Gandalf struck down the Witch King. And of course, at that point, it's still domination, but you can actually see in the background there, it was that turn, which was probably about turn 4, you can see my Riders of Rohan, the rest of kind of Gandalf and Erkenbrand's warband, have started rushing forward, because despite the fact that things were going well and I'd taken down the Mimic and looked like I might take down the Witch King, that's irrelevant. You have to take the objectives, right? So the Witch King fell, the Mimic fell, and then these two, not just kind of large pieces blocking the table, but really a large part of his army had gone, and I was then able to kind of rush forward with the riders and challenge the kind of central objectives. And I think the next turn is when I called Look to the Sun. I kind of got, I lost the priority, called Look to the Sun, and then charged in, and again just had a devastating turn. I didn't actually make a note of it here, but I was just able to kind of really kind of run through a lot of the orcs there. And I don't think I've got a picture of I do have a picture of the final positions. You can see here how the game ended. You can see over there that kind of objective on the left has then been taken by the riders who killed the Mimic. I've got riders holding my own objective at the back. Gandalf and some riders have kind of pushed forward and challenged for that one near the red house. Suladan's still alive, but I think I managed to immobilise him or pin him in place somehow. Sam was able to keep the one at the back with the guy in the field, and you can see right over on the right there's an uncontested objective behind that wood, because Sam was holding that one and the guy holding it ran away on the final turn, because Sam's force was broken. And whilst you can see my Rider Rohan was running around towards it, the game ended before he could get there. So it was one of those things that once Sam, what is it, Domination? Domination is a 25% one, isn't it? I'm sure it is. But once Sam was broken, suddenly, without those heroes to keep him in, his orcs were just legging it. And so I feel like I was actually, I remember saying to him that, not to sound like overly confident, but in the turn I called Look to the Sun, he was something like 12 models away from breaking. And I thought, if I'm not careful here, I could 25% him in the same turn. It was that kind of, if I charge everything in here, no, I have to break him, I want to break him, that's good, but I don't actually want the game to end. And I came damn close, and it was something like, it was just this devastating turn where I killed about 16 or something with Look to the Sun, where he'd had, as I say, he was 12 models away from breaking, something like that, and I ended up leading him about 4 models away from 25%. So whatever that was, it was a devastating turn that kind of again flipped the game on its head. So as a result of that, I managed to win. I managed to get a major win, and I finished the event on 4 wins, which was just 4 major wins and 1 major loss. which I was just absolutely delighted with. And again, huge props to Sam. He was lovely. The kind of game turned against him. You know, he lost. You know, he had this 50-50 with the Witch King that didn't come off, and he lost. But he was just the loveliest bloke. Just smiled his way through everything. It was a super chilled out way to end it. He was really excited about the theme, and so was I. It wasn't quite the Pelennor, but because I had the Helm's Deep Rise of Eomer, but it did feel like very much like the Pelennor. Once everything's charged, you got Gandalf the White fighting against the Witch King, and you got all the riders fighting against the Mummock, and it did feel super themey. It was a cracking way to end it. And then I had the hardest bit of the bloody tournament, which is then you have to vote for your favourite games and your favourite armies. And they were agonising choices, and I don't mind admitting this. I'm really careful about the most important thing, that my favourite armies, I don't mind saying, I gave to Dan Gregory and Tim Garlick for their last Alliance armies. Like, I played some beautiful stuff over it, but those two just happened to be my favourites. The conversions of Elendil and Gil-galad were just stunning, and I thought they were really beautiful, so they got those. And in my favourite game vote, I have said I gave one to Sean, and I'm not going to say who I gave the other one to, because I think it will be a disservice, because I can't stress how much I agonised over it. It could have been any of the other four. It was really tough. As like every single game I played, I was like, well, that gets a favourite game vote, that gets a favourite game vote, that gets a favourite game vote. And I gave one to Sean because I kind of felt contractually obliged to after the way he played the game. But then I went back and forth with all of my other opponents, and I'm not going to say who I gave the final one to, because I think it's unfair to the others in a way. But I just want to say thank you to all of my opponents, because you were absolutely incredible, and I loved every game I played. It was brilliant. I've said this in my last few event reviews, certainly for doubles and certainly for Ardacon. I haven't played an arsehole in ages. It's been great. There's normally, you normally have maybe one game which is a bit ropey at an event, or every couple of events, but certainly for at least 3 tournaments now, I've loved every single game. I'm on a kind of, whatever that must be, 16 match no arsehole run, and it's brilliant. And so thank you to oh god, I'm going to panic here, to Ricky, Dan, Sean, Tim and Sam, because you just made my weekend. There were just 5 brilliant games against brilliant people, and that was it. I handed my card in. I managed to get 4 major wins, and we headed. I went and picked myself up a pint to celebrate the end of the weekend, and we awaited the awards ceremony. So yes, we all settled down for the awards ceremony and to see where things would fall out. And of course, as I said, I'd managed to win 4 major victories, and so you never know how things are going to go at Throne of Skulls. But I thought I was in with a chance. I thought I had a shot. It's all dependent on the favourite game votes and favourite army votes. But I had 5 great games with opponents, so I thought I was in with a shot of a podium place, and we had to wait and see how things would plan out. And so I totally forgot to say, after my 4th game, possibly the most exciting and relieving thing of the entire weekend was that I got a Best Army nomination. Calais! How did I forget that? That was the whole point of the event. In the 4th game during with Tim, Ed Barfield came around and he said that I'd got a Best Army nod. And I felt what I felt 2 years ago and missed out on last year, was just the utter relief, when all the pressure just falls off you, because it was like all of the effort I put into this was worth it. And I was like, oh, that's absolutely awesome. So that for me was like weekend done, job done, got my Best Army nomination. That's all I wanted, and I was just so over the moon. So I got to display this over the lunchtime while people did their voting. And I've got to say huge credit to everyone else who got nominated, because they normally cap it at 8 or 10 armies, and they had 15 nominations, because the stuff was so good. And there was so much really good stuff that didn't even get nominated. The quality was that big. So well done for everyone for once again raising the bar for Throne of Skulls. It was incredible. So yeah, that's what I reminded me. It was at the ceremony we settled down, and we all went up with our Best Army nominees, all 15 of us, and massive credit to the winner, who was Scott Whitefoot. Woo! Scott with his awesome Rivendell display won. Calvin Steele's Right came second with his incredible Last Alliance display on his kind of Mordor board, and you wouldn't believe it, Thomas Harrison got 3rd place, which I was delighted for him, with his beautiful Dale army. And no disrespect to anyone with a display board, I had a display board, but Tom didn't have a display board, so his models were just there on a shelf without the kind of impact of a display board. And thankfully people saw the incredible work he'd done on them, the incredible freehand he did on his cloaks, and he got rewarded for that, which is really, really, really awesome for Tom. So I was really, really happy for him. So congrats to those guys. There was all the painting award winners, the individual ones, which I'm sorry, I don't remember who won. Nick Kelly got most sporting, which is wonderful. He got all 5. I think he was the only person to get all 5 favourite game votes, which is, you know, very, very well deserved, because Nick is a super, super human being. And then we got on to the winners. And I was sitting there, you know, both me and Tom thought, you know, Tom was on 4 wins as well. Dan Entwistle had finished on 5 wins. Mark Stone, who had flown so close to the sun, had tailed off, and he lost his games on day 2. But, you know, we're sitting there waiting to see how things made out. And in 3rd place, it was James Crawford. Well done to James. In 2nd place, it was Mr. Daniel Entwistle. Woo! So Dan had smashed it. He'd won all 5 of his games, and he came 2nd place. And in 1st place, back in the game, boys. I managed to win Throne of Skulls. I was beyond delighted. I am beyond delighted. It was mega. It was super exciting. It was absolutely wonderful, and I was just over the moon. And what did it, as ever, was my opponents, because as I look down here, I managed to get 4 favourite game votes and 3 favourite army votes. So I got 7 votes out of a possible 10. So again, I've already thanked them for the games, but genuinely from the bottom of my heart to Ricky, to Dan, to Sean, to Tim, and to Sam, thank you all so, so much, because the reason I won this event is because of you, because I got your guys' votes, and it really does mean the world to me. So thank you all so, so much for such brilliant, brilliant games, and for giving me the votes which tipped me over. I must say a little addendum, that there was not a mistake or anything, but I think there was a slight issue with Tom missing some votes, and I think if things have been counted slightly differently, Tom Harrison could have actually come 2nd. So a huge well done to Tom for that, and he came 4th overall here, and he used 1,000 points of Dale with 2 Wind Lances, and so like if I look at his score, not only did he get 4 wins, but he got 3 favourite player votes and 3 favourite army votes. So he did really, really well on the votes there, and his army was amazing. But it's 1,000 points of Dale with 2 Wind Lances, and the Wind Lances are fairly awful, and he said they were awful. I think the total they killed was under 100 points. So he was playing. I think he paid extra crew, and he bought a Hornblower in his army because he converted one despite having Swarm Protector. So he paid 200 points a game, which is 1,000 points over the course of the weekend, to kill 100 points of troops. I think is the stat. So he was basically kind of playing with an 800-point army, and he managed to win 4 games as well with Dale, without any magic, without any monsters or anything like that. It's a real testament to how good he was, how good he is at the game, and how beautiful his army was, and what a nice guy he is. So massive congrats to Tom as well, on a really, really historic achievement. And part of me almost wishes that he'd won the damn thing with 1,000 points of Dale, because that is just hashtag so Tom Harrison. But yeah, so it was just awesome, and I was, and I remain utterly delighted. It really made my weekend. I've said this on Facebook. I don't want to go too much into it, but the week before I had an awful week at work. I had a really bad week at work, and I was really annoyed. And I took Thursday off work, partially as a result, and worked on this stuff all day. So I had a hobby week. And then I went away and had just the best weekend with the best friends, and I was fine. I was utterly made up with the weekend as it was when they'd announced 2nd place. I was like, this has been the best week ever, and to get this was just like the ultimate delightful chicken soup for the soul after the week I'd had. So I had the best weekend. I always say it's my favourite event, and this did nothing to assuage that. It was fun walking around looking like an idiot. Having brilliant games, playing with a really cool army that I really enjoyed using. I was really pleasantly surprised by how well they did, winning 4 games. They're never going to replace Riders of Rohan Riders of Theoden as the kind of top tier Rohan army, but I think they're better than their reputation allows. Like Gandalf is amazing in the list. Erkenbrand is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant in that army for his points. I think he's 75 on the horse for a +2 courage warhorn, 3 might, heroic march, Fight 5 hero who's a banner to his red shields. And yeah, I was very, very pleasantly surprised by how well the army performed. I think going forwards, I think you could drop the captain and his warband, which would get you down to about 850. But I think losing Erkenbrand would mean that A, you go down to Courage 3, which affects you in all sorts of ways, and B, Eomer and Gandalf then start to use their might for heroic moves. So I reckon this army could possibly, I don't think you lose anything by dropping the captain and the numbers, but I reckon this army could perform very, very well around about the 800 points mark. If you get Gandalf, Eomer and Erkenbrand and enough riders to make a decent force. And I'm actually now thinking I might take it to the GT. Not because I think it'll do well, but just because it was so much fun to use. And I think I might be interested to try it out at a different points value and have some fun with it. So yeah, well done, Riders of Rohan. Good game, good game, good game, good game. It was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant fun weekend. We then had hugs aplenty, and we all headed out. A big group of us headed out to Beefeater, and we had dinner before saying our sad goodbyes. I stayed in the face paint because I was like, why not? Let's go out and celebrate. And then me and Tom drove home. And sadly, then I washed the face paint off, and the joys of Throne of Skulls were washed away, and I went back to the real world. But it's just an amazing weekend. I said thank you to so many people. Cheers to Emma as well. She never watched this, for this beautiful banner that she made, and for letting me go and play toys, and my mum for making that. But also to Ed Barfield and Chris Charles and Andy Barlow and the rest of the events team who put on an absolutely incredible event as always. It was just the absolute best, and I loved it. And there we go. I think that's it. I could keep going. I thought this would be about an hour. I think it's past an hour and a half now. I kind of want to say sorry, but I'm not really sorry. I loved it. I love Throne of Skulls. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I managed to win it this year. So I'm absolutely on cloud 9. It's the last event I'm going to this year, and it's capped a really, really brilliant year of events for me. It was just the perfect pre-Christmas cherry on top of a great year. So I am utterly over the moon with how it went, and yeah, very, very delighted. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this look back over the event, and I hope you've enjoyed the last kind of 5 vlogs which have looked into my Throne of Skulls journey, which was a good journey to have this year. I hope to be back this year, possibly around New Year's Eve or something, with one more vlog for the year, kind of reviewing the year's work essentially, the year's hobbying and all that sort of stuff, and then kicking off the new Road 2 series in the coming years. We turn our attention probably to the GT in February. But other than that, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, please, please leave a comment below if you've enjoyed the video. I always read them and try and engage with them and reply to everything. We will have our next live stream soon. At the time of recording, our next live stream will be our Christmas stream, which is always very, very exciting. And we will, I'll have a hobby vlog up soon. We have a Patreon link down there if you want to join us and join in the coolest community in all the lands. And we have our affiliate link for 7 City Collectibles. And yeah, if on some off chance you're here and you haven't hit subscribe, please, please hit the subscribe button. But that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you very soon on Battle Streams in Middle-earth.